Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Let's talk about the Death Cult and Assassin's Creed Shadows. But before I get to that, I happened to write a samurai novel some years ago. Here's the original cover for it. This is like the first edition. There's no one in this who's not Japanese. Every character in it is Japanese. That will be slightly relevant as I get into what I'm talking about. So, Assassin's Creed Shadows, if you are not familiar with the controversy around this, like a lot of Assassin's Creed games that go to different times, in different historical places, this one is in feudal Japan, I believe in the Sengoku period, which would be roughly the 1500s. The controversy is that being set in 1500s Japan, your player character is an African. It's a little odd. You would think that for a historical tourist kind of thing, you would have a Japanese main character, just like how when they did China, they had a Chinese character. You know, when they did Italy, they had an Italian character. The very first game, it was a Palestinian character, right? Someone from that area, not a foreigner. So why would they choose a foreigner? And especially a foreigner who can't blend in with the Japanese crowd at all. And why is he a samurai, right? Like, there's pictures of him as a samurai. Why isn't he a ninja? Like, wouldn't he be a ninja? Well, obviously you're not going to blend in as an African. Now, the defense to this really bizarre choice has been to say that there was, in fact, a historical black samurai. Now, this is actually up for major debate. There may not have been any such person. And to the extent that that person existed, he may not have been a samurai. He may have been just a guy that hung out, that kept around for like novelty reasons because he was different, because his dark skin looked different to all the Japanese people. So that's the defense. Is like it was possible there may have been a historical samurai, but usually when people are buying something that's like a historical tourist kind of game, they are wanting to experience the normative aspects of that setting, not random anomalies, not exceptions, not the European who became a samurai like William Adams, not the African who possibly existed who became a samurai. They're wanting to experience like the normal parts of that culture. So that's an obvious marketing thing to me. They've never done this before. They didn't have like a foreigner in the Chinese Assassin's Creed game. So why did they do this here? Well, I have a couple of reasons for why they did it. Even if there was a historical like black samurai, I don't think that's why they chose that. I think they chose that because the game company, and I'm gonna say like the woke left or the death cult in general, they tend to have a hatred of Japan. Games media really does not like Japan or Japanese people. You get it as a constant bias against Japanese games, against Japanese games companies, against the types of games they make, the popularity of the games, the aesthetics of the games, including having like attractive female characters, as well as the gameplay, maybe them being difficult or things like that. There's a very strong anti-Japanese bias in the games industry and especially games media in the West. So the main reason that I think the main character is not Japanese is because like the woke mind has a problem with the theory of mind. They can't, like they call themselves multicultural, but they're actually not. They only use multiculturalism as a weapon to destroy Western culture. They're just anti-Western culture. That is, if you bring in other cultures, that'll just level that'll destroy the mainline Western Christian culture. The truth is they actually don't like those foreign cultures. And in fact, if you pay attention to the schooling system, there's nothing multicultural about our schooling system. The whole point is to level everybody into a gray mush that is formed by the state into this sort of multinational, identityless cog in a machine. So no, they don't really like foreign cultures. In fact, I would say liking other cultures is a classically conservative trait because that comes from love of the self. I love what's unique about my culture, and I can love what's unique and interesting about my neighbor's culture, knowing that it's different and apart from mine. Like what makes Italian culture interesting isn't just pasta. It's the Italians that live in Italy. It's the way they live. It's the art they make. You can appreciate all those things as a foreigner because they're different from what you have. They're different than the art you make. They're different than the food you make. It's not that American food is bad. It's that Italian food is also good and it's different. That's what makes Italian food interesting, is that it's different. Same thing with art, culture, language. The differences between cultures and appreciating them is something that goes back to more classical ideas. So I think the woke mind has a big problem understanding that somebody can love Japanese culture and be interested in Japanese culture and be interested in its history, its people, its religions, its culture, everything about it, and not want to be Japanese. The reason I think they made the main character not Japanese is so that you don't have to role play, you don't have to play as a bad Japanese person. That in other words, they think the culture is bad and evil, and they have a feeling that if you're playing as a person in a bad, evil culture, then that will make you feel bad, right? That you'll feel bad. Like if you were to play as a crusader, it would make you feel bad because some crusaders did bad things, right? Or on the other side, right? Whatever it happens to be. But that's not what people who are interested in a historical tour want, right? They actually want to experience the culture. They can love the culture and not love everything about the culture or agree with its morals or things like that, okay? You can think that feudal Japan is really cool without thinking seppuku is cool, right? But the woke mind, the death cultists, they don't really get this, okay? They want to level everything into a gray goop and kill all other cultures besides the death cult. That's why I call them the death cult. They want all cultures to die except their own weird little secular religion. So that's why I think that they replaced the main character. They couldn't have him be Japanese because people might play as a Japanese samurai and think that feudal Japanese culture was cool. You can't have that. It has to be a postmodern critique of the culture. And in order to do that, you have to make the main character an other somehow. And we've already done white others, like in James Clavell Shogun or in Neo, right? A PS4 game where you play as William Adams, a white samurai. Anyway, that's already been done. So we have to have an other that is also a diversity hire. So we're going to make him a possibly non-existent African assassin samurai somehow. Why aren't you a ninja? I don't understand why they didn't just make it a ninja. People love to be ninjas. Ninjas are cool, right? So just make him a ninja. But they didn't do that. So that's why I think they did it. I think this also plays into what I call the body problem that exists in the death cult and in the woke, the woke psyche, which is this idea that you cannot play as or experience empathy or sympathy for things that are not you. It's kind of the difference between, boys want to be Batman, girls want Batman to be them, right? It's this feeling that all things must express me somehow. They have to be an expression of my modern secular values. When they play D&D, they can't play as like an assassin because that's bad. They have to play as some kind of weird tiefling with a morality that has nothing to do with demons or anything, because that expresses how they feel about themselves rather than role playing as a character that's different from them. It's the same people who say, like, you can't, if you're playing as a female character and you're a male, you must be trans, because how could you play as a female and not identify as a female? And the answer is because I'm not that character. That's just a thing moving on the screen that I aesthetically like, right? I don't feel like a woman if I'm playing as a woman in a game, nor does a woman feel like a man, vice versa. I remember playing World of Warcraft, I met women who played male characters. Why? They just liked the way they looked. They thought they looked cool. They thought they looked cute or whatever. So they played as them. Like, who cares, right? It's not you, okay? The avatar is not you. But I think the woke psyche, they can't separate self from even a character in a book has to somehow express their inner values. That's probably why their writing is so bad. Is all the writers have to express their own inner values that they have right now in 2020, whatever year it happens to be. It has to express those years. So when you write this story, and I'm looking at this, right? It's to free Japan from its oppressors. What are its oppressors in the Sengoku period, in the Warring States period? Like, what does this mean? The oppressors, Japanese culture itself, to free Japan from the samurai who are bad guys? I don't know. What is that going to mean in context? I don't know yet. Could be a million different things. The point is, I think they chose an African character not because they were interested in some footnote of a historical person who may not have ever existed, but because they couldn't deal with having you be a Japanese person in a culture that they hate. In other words, they hate Japan and they hate its culture. Therefore, you can't have a character be Japanese when you hate that culture. For whatever reason, there's a strong anti-Japanese bias. You're basically part of the great Satan that is the West at this point. And I'm sorry for that if you're a Japanese or you like Japanese culture. Believe it or not, you can like a culture and not want to be that thing, right? You can be interested in other cultures and periods in history without thinking that everybody in them was morally superior or morally great, okay? Just history doesn't work that way. You can be really interested in ancient Rome and also be against slavery. Like, those things are not incompatible when you're dealing with history or things like that, or fiction. So anyway, I did actually write a book set in feudal Japan. There are no foreigners in it. Last thing I'll say, just as an in note, this is a bit of a writing technique about the fish out of water. So if this doesn't apply to you, great. Now you'll learn about it. If you read the book Shogun by James Clavell, he uses a literary technique that I call the fish out of water, which is where you have the protagonist, or at least one of the main characters, be a foreigner to whatever setting you're in. So if it's like an isekai setting, you get portaled into another world. That person's from our world, and he asks all the questions that you would ask as the reader, not knowing anything about that setting. So it's the same idea. Most of the readers for Shogun, especially when it came out, really knew nothing about Japanese culture, especially feudal Japanese culture, around the year 1600 or whenever that takes place. My book takes place in like 1511, by the way. So you have a foreigner in Blackthorn who's based on William Adams, and he just asks all the questions that the audience would ask. And so you can use that for portal fantasy, right? You get portaled into another world. Where am I? What are my powers, right? Like, those are the questions that the audience would ask to try to figure out how the setting works. So that is a useful literary technique. It's not necessarily one you have to use in a game, right? You don't have to use that, and you don't have to use it in a game. It's not mandatory in any sense. Just because the culture is foreign, you can learn that culture kind of indirectly through watching characters interact with each other, rather than watching a foreigner try to figure out the culture kind of as a placeholder for you trying to figure out the culture. You don't have to do that. So it's not a mandatory technique, but you'll find it in lots of things, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, all the way up to like modern isekai stuff will have that. The last thing I'll say is that probably everything I'm going to say about this, I know I said that was the last thing. One more thing. Everything I say about this is probably moot, and the reason is because this was probably never going to be a good game to begin with. Assassin's Creed is not a franchise that has a really sterling reputation at this point. It's been mud genre slop for years at this point. In fact, Ubisoft, mud genre are pretty much the same thing now. So it probably doesn't matter. The controversy is, like, I probably wouldn't have bought this game because I haven't been interested in an Assassin's Creed game in a lot of years. I liked the old ones from back in the day, but the new ones just don't interest me. They're just mud genre. It's just mud genre. I'm not super interested in mud genre games. So chances are most of this is moot because the game was never going to be that good to begin with. And I think gamers can sniff that it's not an attempt to be historically accurate. I think gamers can sniff that out immediately and quickly. They understand the setup right away, and people are very sensitive to it at this point. So leave me your thoughts down below about Assassin's Creed Shadows. Do you think it is a cash grab? Do you think that they're do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What do you think about it? Let me know what you think, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day.